Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors. We are continuing on with our Heart Month. We've got two more presentations. One of them is Food for Thought and a Healthy Heart. I have Mary Mellady here with me. She is a registered dietitian with TMC, our TMC Wellness department. How are you today, Mary?
I am good. How are you, Maya?
Good, thank you. As you know, we always have an in-person audience along with an online audience. So if you're watching from home, please feel free to put any questions for Mary into the chat, and I will address those afterwards with Mary. I'm going to go ahead and put your PowerPoint up and let you get started.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. This morning we are going to talk about food for thought. If you've been to any of my presentations in the past 10 years, I feel like I've been doing this. There is a theme that what we eat, whether it's for specifically for heart health or brain health, it kind of goes both ways. If we keep our heart healthy and eat with that in mind, it is also good for our mind. So the two kind of go together. So consider this both a talk for February heart health and a talk for March for brain health. How about that? We're going to get a twofer here today. First, is this not the coolest graphic ever? Yeah, I was just talking to Maya about this. I was pretty proud about this find, and then I couldn't find anything else much cooler. So we'll just go with that. Let's see. That doesn't work. Okay. It's okay. Oh, it just needs to be turned on. Ooh, okay, it's that day. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, how to use the clicker, turn it on. So I just want to kind of go over this idea of eating healthy and why it's important. We're going to talk about something called the mind diet. I'm going to switch it up on you guys today. Kind of the core principles and emphasis of that diet. We'll talk about some specific foods that are good for our brain and our heart. We are going to talk about, as usual, foods that are not the best for us that we might want to choose a little less of. And then I also threw in some kind of what's new, which was just kind of a random find. I found some articles over the weekend that just came to me that were all about brain health. And so I thought I'd throw that in as well. And then just some practical tips because some of the stuff can be a little bit big. And what do I choose first? And so I just kind of want to boil it down a little bit about what we can do in a practical sense so that we can make some changes that will help both our heart and our brain. So first, it's the idea that nutrition is a preventative and it's a therapeutic intervention for both our heart and our brain. So meaning that we can eat healthy and make good food choices and help prevent disease. It also can help to mitigate some of our symptoms. If we already are on the road of a disease process, it can help reverse some of our symptoms. Food choices can impact how we feel. Like, let's think about something really basic. When you eat a really heavy meal, how do you feel? Sluggish and tired. Yep. Versus when you eat something that is fresh and whole foods and not a lot of extra processing to it, we generally feel lighter and have a little bit better feeling about what we just ate. Some of that is up here, and some of that is actually physically how we feel. But so just keep that in mind. And a lot of times we forget that when we are making food decisions, we're making it out of habit or we're making it out of instant gratification versus really kind of keeping in our forefront of our thinking, how is this going to make me feel in the long run or in the next couple hours even? I'll give you an example. My husband has a lot of food insensitivities and he just can't help himself sometimes. And I'm like, why are you eating that? He's like, it's going to be okay. And then, the next day he's like, I feel really crappy. So yeah, we gotta pull around how we're going to feel at the other end of eating something. May not be what we want to choose in the moment. There is no one diet that is perfect for everyone. So I don't care what we read, that this is the new diet, this is what everybody recommends. It's not for everyone, okay? Even when I'm going to tell you up here, they're the two most widely approved and generally studied diets, but they're more a way of eating. But still, it may not work for everybody, okay? So just keep that in mind. And that the MIND diet that I'm going to talk about, the reason I chose this particular diet, because it combines the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. DASH diet has been around since I first became a dietitian. And so it's been around for a really, really long time. And the Mediterranean diet has been coined in more recent years, but it's been a way of eating for decades and decades. So both really well supported ways of choosing our food, okay? All right, so the MIND diet combines, and that's where the name comes from, the Mediterranean DASH, Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. I like that idea that we can delay the loss of our brain cells, of our thinking, of our memory and cognitive function. That is really important to many of us, especially if you've lived with anybody in your family that's had Alzheimer's. My mom passed away from Alzheimer's, and so I definitely don't want to be that to my kids, right? So I want to make good food choices so that I can delay that. So as I said before, it combines two really well-researched and long-standing ways of eating. And it just generally focuses on foods that help to keep our blood pressure at an optimal level, that helps to decrease inflammation and oxidative stress, okay? And because all of that is what's going to support our heart and our mind. And it really puts an emphasis on, so the DASH diet is really focused on reducing our sodium/salt intake, okay? And so that was originally designed for just managing blood pressure, but now we know how vital blood pressure is linked to overall heart health and our brain health as well. And then, of course, that Mediterranean diet is really focused on whole foods, healthy fats, healthy proteins that can really support our heart health, okay? So that's why I really liked this idea that they've combined the two into one great way of eating. So the core elements of this MIND diet is the whole food and a variety of foods. So when we talk about the Mediterranean diet, we talk about a lot of plant-based foods, eating a variety of fruits and vegetables with an emphasis on vegetables, eating a variety of colors. A long time ago, I created color wheels that were around the idea that we wanted to eat a palette of colors, that each color within the rainbow provides us with some different nutrient or emphasis on a nutrient. And so I like that idea of eating a rainbow on variety of colors. It's also really focused on healthy fats. So we don't want to go so low on fats because we do need fat in our diet. Fat helps with a lot of the absorption of our fat-soluble vitamins, the A, D, E, and K. Vitamin E is an antioxidant, so we need that definitely to be in our diet. Vitamin K helps with blood clotting, so when we're healing, we need that. So we need a certain amount of fat in our diet. So it used to be we wanted to be on these ultra low-fat diets way back in like the 80s. That was a thing. Now we know we need a certain amount of fat, but we need healthy kinds of fats. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference between healthy fats and unhealthy fats, right? And fish is really risen in what our recommendation is around how often we should eat fish. We definitely want to be eating fish 2 or more times a week. And that's for many benefits. It's a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, which is really good for our heart and our brain. And it's a really nice source of healthy fat for us and healthy version of protein. And then limiting our salt or sodium intake. I'm going to use those words interchangeably. And limiting those unhealthy fats and processed foods, I will add here as well. All right, so brain and heart healthy foods. These all look really good. Nuts. And this, you're going to ask what nuts? And I'm going to tell you more specifically later, but walnuts, almonds, Pecans have some good research around them, even macadamia nuts and cashews, okay? And any nut butters we'll include in there with nuts, as long as they are nut butters that don't have extra sugar, fat, and salt added to them, okay? And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Leafy green vegetables. We always hear about kale. Kale, kale, kale. Who here likes kale? Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. I'm with you. Thumbs down. Okay, sorry. I know that's bad for a dietitian to say that I do not like kale. I don't like kale. It's a texture thing. I feel like I'm eating a sponge or something worse. I don't know. But but there's many other choices. I love spinach. Also dark leafy green. I love romaine. So those are other good options, right? So the point of me telling you that is you don't have to love everything I'm telling you up here to eat. In all transparency, I don't. Okay. But you can find things that do work for you. Okay. Other vegetables also good. Again, we want to eat that variety, that colorful rainbow, because we get different nutrient concentrations from the different colors, right? And then fish, and then foods that are high in antioxidants, which happen to be some of the foods on here, the berries, the dark leafy greens, but also things like citrus, because vitamin C is a great antioxidant. And so we're going to get a lot of that from things like oranges and other orange colored fruits and vegetables. So I included 2 charts. I know they're probably really small on your handouts, but I really liked these charts, and so that's why I included them. They're not any different information than what I just talked to you about, but it just kind of gives you a reference for later on, that it's kind of giving you suggestions. So as we've always talked, we want half of our plate to be vegetables and fruits at every meal. And so that comes up to, 6+ servings every week. You're probably looking at more than that if you're including vegetables and fruits, because we include that as half your plate. But specifically green leafy vegetables of that 6+ a week. Okay. So that might feel a little overwhelming, but it shouldn't be, because green leafy vegetables by serving, if we're thinking about something like spinach, is a cup, right? But then when you cook it, that's very little. So hardly anything. Like I can cook off a whole bag of spinach to use on a pizza. And I do eat pizza. Yes. Berries. So berries aren't always in season. So what do? Thank you. Yes. See, I don't need to teach you all anything. You know this stuff. But yes, frozen berries are a really great option. A great option is to stock up and freeze them when they're on sale, right? And they're really at the peak of their sweetness, and then just freeze them. And then you can use them again in smoothies, or you can put them on top of Greek yogurt, things like that. And then nuts. This is a problem if you're allergic to nuts, like I am. So you find other sources, right? So this includes nuts and the nut butters, as I was talking about before, okay? And then I really liked this one too, because it gave a nice breakdown of these are antioxidant or vitamins and minerals that we should include in our diet, but it also gives some great food sources and what is exactly it's doing. So in the case of vitamin C, it's really enhances our immune cell function. Vitamin E is protective against the oxidative damage. Beta carotene helps support the production. And then that zinc helps protect our skin from the UV damage that is oxidative in its own way. Okay. So hopefully those are useful for you, and you can see them on the handout. I should have made those extra big. So when we think about protein gets a lot of hype, that we need to eat a high protein diet because we're all on low carb diets. Who here is a low carb diet? What? Oh my gosh. Okay, great. No, that's good, because so many times people say they're on this ultra low carb diet, but carbs are what provide us with energy and starts the cycle of how we process all the protein that we eat. So good for you all. Kudos. You can go home winners. But, however, protein sources are often also high in unhealthy kinds of fat. So if we think about our red meat, which we know we should not consume a lot of, we should limit our red meat consumption to less than twice a week, because that is linked, more than twice a week is linked to an increased risk for colon and other types of cancers, okay? So what kind of protein sources do we eat? So that's up here. As we talked at the very beginning, the Mediterranean diet really puts an emphasis on plant-based sourcing of food, both for, for our fats and for our protein sources. So that's why we see nuts and beans up here as really important. And then fish, we'll talk a little bit more about fish, but fatty fish, that salmon, the mackerel, the herring, that's really an important source of healthy fat for our diet. That is good for our brain, and the omega-3s are good for our heart. And then poultry is, because it is a lean source of protein, okay? Again, I noted on there to remove the skin. All of this is with the caveat that we're not choosing forms of this that are super high in salt. So thinking about fish, we're going to eat tuna, canned tuna, which is great for us. Make sure you're looking for the low sodium version of that, because there is naturally a lot of salt that just goes into the canning process. Same thing goes for the beans. Recommendation is that we're going to cook our beans from, raw, let them soak, and then cook them. If you are lazy as I am, then you're going to use a can, and that's okay. But you can choose the low sodium version of the whichever bean you're choosing and rinse it. Okay. And that helps to take off some of that sodium. It also helps to take off some of those gaseous products that cause us to feel bloated. Okay. So it's kind of a win-win there by rinsing our beans. When we're thinking of healthy fats, the biggest thing we can remember is that we want it to be liquid at room temperature versus solid. And that doesn't always apply here in Arizona, because sometimes things that are solid other places of the country will liquefy here anyway, because it's so warm. But just think in general, the idea that if it is solid at room temperature, that means it has a lot more saturation to it. It's a high in saturated fat product. So thinking about Crisco, right? What we used to use, or that we would deep fry with, or something like that. It's this white solid product, right? That's completely saturated because it is so solid. It doesn't melt. And so that's kind of your standard, versus the other end of the spectrum is something like olive oil. You can't really even make that solid. You can put it in the refrigerator, it will solidify, but if you take it out of the refrigerator, it will liquefy fairly quickly. Okay, so that's the two kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So good sources of the healthy fats are the olive oil, the canola oil, or avocado oil, grapeseed oil, something like that. Food sources of these healthy fats, the fatty fishes that I talked about, the nuts, and avocados. The thing to think about with regards to these healthy food sources of fats is our portion sizes. I hate to tell you this, but a portion of avocado is not the whole thing. It's not even half. It's not even a quarter. It's an eighth of the avocado. That's so depressing. So a way around that is to mix it with something else. So if you are going to mash it up and use it as like an avocado spread, you could mash it up and mix it with some non-fat Greek yogurt. And then you get some protein, you get some calcium. It kind of makes it more. And so you use less of the avocado, right? Because you're mixing it with another product, and then spread that on your toast or use that as a dip. Okay. So that's a good way to feel like you're eating more avocado, but not getting as much of that avocado. And that's merely because there's a lot of calories associated. Even if the fat is healthy, there's just more calories associated with that. So by choosing to eat the whole avocado, you're just going to get a lot more calories. Okay. And so even though I'm not talking at all about calories, it is an important thing to kind of think about, because the more calories we eat, the more active we need to be in order to keep that balance of what we're taking in and what we're actually needing and using. Okay. I just wanted to mention, it seems to have come up back in the news, is the idea of whole fat dairy and coconut oil. We still stand, as far as the Nutrition Academy, that whole fat dairy is not what we want to be choosing, that after the age of 1, we shouldn't be consuming a lot of whole fat dairy, and that coconut oil is still not, it's still saturated. It's more saturated, has more saturated fat in it than butter does. So both of those things at this time, and I'm going to put that caveat in there, because as we do more research, things kind of, ebb and flow and change a little bit. As a long time ago, we weren't allowed to eat eggs, right? Eggs and shrimp are high in cholesterol, and we weren't allowed to eat those if we wanted to protect our heart and reduce our cholesterol levels. However, now we know that it's not the cholesterol, in the actual product itself. And so that it's more the saturated fat that we're looking at. So I don't know what's going to happen with whole fat dairy and coconut oil. I just think we need to do a lot more research on it and have some more longevity around the studies to really determine whether it is as unhealthy or as healthy for us as the differing views seem to say. Okay. For now, though, I would recommend that you stick with the low fat, no fat versions of milk, yogurt, cottage cheese, whatever you're choosing. Okay. And then coconut oil, again, there's a lot of information saying that it is a healthy kind of saturated fat because of the medium chain triglycerides. Flip side says it still acts as a saturated fat in our body and still increases our cholesterol levels. So there's 2 camps out there. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics still is on the side that these would be things we would want to limit. Okay. Okay, foods to minimize. You know this: salt, sugar, and saturated fats. Some studies refer to these as ultra-processed foods. And they even have a cool little acronym, the UPFs. I was like, what is a UPF? Is that like a new kind of sunlight thing? But no, it just stands for ultra-processed food. So, but studies indicate that food or diets that are high in ultra-processed foods, meaning that they're high in salt, high in sugar, high in saturated fats, can increase our risk of dementia and cognitive decline by 28%. And it can be, when they look at it, they looked at total calories and percentage of total calories that people were consuming. And so if you consumed about 20% of your total calories as an ultra-processed food, something that's high in fats, saturated fat, sugar, or salt, that's all that it took to have this decline in cognitive function. When you think about that, it's not very much, though, because think about the calorie content in something like, let's say a donut. Donut's on here, right? That's high in saturated fat and sugar. And food coloring. And what I know, I picked it because it has this really obnoxious, disgusting looking blue frosting. So something like that has a whole lot of calories in it compared to even if you ate 2,000 calories. So it's very easy to get to 20% of your total calories just from eating 1 or 2 things. And so that's just something to think about. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
At what age would that start showing up? If you eat donuts and sweets, and would it start showing up 60s, 70s?
The age range that they tested was 62. So it could show up sooner though, right? That's just the age they started to test folks at. There is good news though. If you've eaten a diet like this looks like the teenage dream, right? Yes, please, to everything on there. There is good news that they have shown that if you start to change the way that you're eating, you can change that cognitive projection. Does that make sense? That you don't necessarily have to have a cognitive decline if you start to choose more healthful foods. So that was good to read. And the reason, let me see if there's anything else on here that I wanted to share. Well, the mechanism, right? Why? Why do all these foods cause us to have cognitive decline? And it's multifactorial. So it's sugar. So all of those. So right. So we talked about we want to eat a low sodium diet. Initially, long ago, we were talking about a low sodium diet because we wanted blood pressure control. Because if we have high blood pressure, our blood flow isn't getting to our brain. Okay, so that's why we shouldn't eat the fat and the salt. The fats and the sugars also contribute to inflammation within our body and in our brain. It can cause neural inflammation. Maybe not so much that you would, when I think inflammation, I think I have inflammation in my broken finger, right? That I see and I feel. So it's not something that we're going to feel, but maybe 10 years down the line, it's going to start to impact us in our cognitive function, whether that's in decision making or memories or something like that.
This is in the news constantly.
Yeah.
And they're saying causes heart disease.
Yeah. That sugar can also increase your heart inflammation and increase that laying down of plaque within our vessels. So this idea that sugar and salt, that all of these things combined together are like this trifecta of food, that while I talked about at the very beginning, we kind of want that. Like we go to the movies, we want to eat the popcorn, right? But then afterwards, we don't feel so good maybe because it makes us feel really heavy. But also it's impacting our brain and our heart health that we may not necessarily feel today, but in 10 years we might. So that's why it's really important to start to think about, what am I ingesting that might feel good right in this moment, like it's super gratifying, but 10 years down the line, I'm going to pay for that. And that's hard to do, right? Food is one of those things that's really hard to connect with future self. Exercise is a little bit easier. We can say, okay, if I don't continue to walk and I'm not mobile, I can start to feel my decline in how flexible I am or how strong I am to stand up. And I always want to be able to do those things. If you've been to any of my talks, you know my biggest fear is not to be able to get up off the toilet by myself. So I'm going to continue to do things to strengthen my legs because I always want to be able to do that. So that's my future self thinking, you best be doing something to help yourself. But food is really hard for us because everything we eat and what we do happens inside. We don't see a lot of external things happening other than weight gain, right? I mean, honestly, we don't. We don't see that there's something happening, things happening in our brain. We can't see inside our heart vessels unless you have a lovely camera go in there for you and tell you that you're totally clogged. So it's really hard for us to connect what we eat today with a future state. But we have to start doing that because more and more research is showing what we eat now is going to infect us long term. And as I started this all with, can prevent and be an intervention for some of these chronic diseases and even things of not chronic, but things like cancer. Okay. So this isn't easy at all. Eating healthy, if it's not intuitive for you, it is a daily decision and can feel a little overwhelming and can feel like, oh, this again. Why do I got to do this again? Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that that's a thing, but that we can make positive changes. And then sugar. Okay, so we started talking about sugars all over the news. There is even a movie about sugar and sugar addiction and what it does. It was a really good film, very depressing because I like sugar. But so sugar consumption is linked to a 62% faster rate of cognitive decline. That's huge. And again, that's linked to the inflammation that it causes. It also is linked to sugar and salt consumption is linked to more amylase beta protein being laid down in our brain. And that is linked to Alzheimer's disease. So they see patients with Alzheimer's have a really high amount of this AMB protein. Okay. So that's just something to think about. Something that I want to point out is, and why the title of the slide is sugar, 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 is I will hear people say, oh, I don't eat, I'm good about eating sugar. I'm really choosing the healthy stuff. I'm choosing agave or I choose honey because it's natural. Okay. That's great. That's better than choosing white refined sugar. But sugar is still sugar. Our body doesn't know the difference. It processes sugar as a carbohydrate, it breaks it down for energy and uses it the same. Okay? So whether it's naturally occurring, which we will find in things like fruits or milks, any dairy products have lactose. That's a sugar. Fructose is naturally in juice and fruit. So whether there's added sugar to juice or not, there's sugar in fruit. In fact, manufacturers think that they're tricking you by using fructose because it's a natural fruit sugar. It's still sugar. Our body processes it the same. So all sugar is equal. So that's something I want you guys to think about. We'll talk about artificial sweetener in another slide. So we often get the question, then what's the best sugar to choose? Yeah, because sometimes we just need sweeteners in things. Maybe, maybe not.
Honey.
Honey? Why do you say honey?
Bee made it.
A bee made it. Still gets processed as sugar. The sugar that is the best choice is the one that you will use the least amount of. So if you can use the least amount of honey because it provides the flavor that you want in the smallest amount, that is the best choice for you. If it is agave syrup because that has a different flavor, or maple syrup because that has a profile that you just need a little bit and that gives you that flavor you want, then that's the best choice. Okay? So think about it from that perspective. What can I use the least amount of? Okay? So I hope I didn't just terrorize somebody there. I don't. It was.
But I don't remember it.
I feel like the guy's name was, I'll Google it at the end. Or maybe Jen can Google it right now. She's on her phone. Thank you. It was, yeah. And it went beyond just like losing teeth and obesity. It was a great movie.
Remember what year?
Like the
Was that
9.
something that Michelle Obama was in?
I feel like she promoted it, but I feel like it was made way before her. I feel like it's from
But I
the,
think they showed it in the theaters here.
they did. They
Yeah,
did.
when she was first lady.
I feel like you're right, but I feel like it had been made a while before.
Yeah, well, back.
So these are just 75. I'm sure there are more different names for sugar. That's a lot. And what I will tell you that is kind of a pet peeve of mine is food manufacturers are so smart. I feel like I'm in a soapbox on this a lot, but they know that we read labels now. And so they know if they put just sugar as the number one ingredient that we're not going to eat it because, oh, that's really high in sugar, right? Okay. So now they use like 6 different sugars in there so they can put it way farther down on the list and think that they're going to confuse us. Oh, I'm going to use coconut sugar because that's natural, so that's got to be healthier. And I'm going to use some malt syrup because that's probably not really all that sweet because it's malt flavored. So they do this to trick us. And I'll give the example of Fig Newtons, which used to be one of my favorite cookies. And then they did this to it. Like sugar was the 3rd ingredient. It's a cookie. And now they added, rather than just sugar, Now there's like 4 different sweeteners in there that are all at the bottom. So now it just reads, whole grain wheat and figs, and that sounds so good. They're still just cookies. So really think about that when you're looking. This goes to the idea of what can I eat if I have a sweet tooth that is going to satisfy that sweet tooth in the smallest amount. And sometimes that's going with the really good stuff. Sometimes that's just having a piece of dark chocolate and just doing it, right? And enjoying it. Okay, so that's why I put this up here as well. Just so we don't get lost in the idea that, oh, it's okay to eat this product because sugar is not one of the top 3 ingredients. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Now my next soapbox is salt. So there's a lot of mixed studies around directly correlating salt intake to cognitive decline. And because they've done a lot of animal studies that has shown that there is a significant change in our cognition with higher salt intakes, but we haven't done enough studies around humans, okay? So that's why I say can increase our cognitive impairment. So just something to keep, another thing that we need to keep studying. Nutrition is really such a young science around how it impacts human health. So we're learning more and more as we go. So salt does, however, impact our blood pressure in most cases. So that's why if we have any issues with our blood pressure, the first thing we do is say we should start to reduce how much salt we're eating in our diet and high salt foods. So let's link those two. We have high blood pressure. Blood is not pumping efficiently by our heart. That's going to make our heart pump harder. That's going to be a stressor on our heart. We're not getting enough oxygenated blood up to our brain. That's going to cause inflammation in our brain. So it seems like a very valid conclusion to say too much salt is going to affect not only our heart, but also our brain. Okay, so let's just go with that. And then that whole neuroinflammation I said was also linked to that accelerated deposition of that amyloid beta proteins that is linked with Alzheimer's. So we have 3 different kinds of salt up here. Is there one healthier? No. So I'll have a lot of people also tell me, oh, well, I eat the Himalayan pink salt because that's healthier. Or I eat the kosher salt because that's healthier. Well, in truth, it will show you that it is lower in sodium, teaspoon for teaspoon. But that's because there's less there because it's a coarser product, so it weighs more. So you can't compare weight to weight. You have to, the amount, once it's the same kind of proportion, has to be evaluated. And salt is salt is salt. Okay. So don't be fooled by paying, extra money for this salt because it's low in sodium, because it's really not. It's just coarser, heavier. And so they can say that because in reality, 1 teaspoon is going to have less, but it's also a lot coarser. So my recommendation is, if there for some reason is a salt that tastes better to you because it's pink or black or green, and you use less of it, then that's the salt you should use. Okay? And that's where I'll leave that.
And what is the guideline for how much salt you should intake a day?
So if you have any blood pressure issues at all, then the recommendation is right around 2,000 milligrams per day. 2,000, which isn't very much, honestly. Yes, ma'am.
Food that's prepared either in a restaurant or frozen that you take home, it's just loaded with salt. And I talk to people about it and they say, oh, Americans love salt.
Mm-hmm.
There's salt in there, doesn't taste good. As a salt hater, I really have a hard time if I don't prepare everything from scratch. It's loaded with salt.
Yeah. And we go to restaurants and there's salt on every table, right?
No, the salt's in the food.
Well, no, but there's also salt on the tables if you go out to a restaurant. every fast food place, which is already loaded with salt, gives you salt packets. So, and to your point, it may not, I can't tell you how it is now, but if you use, like decades ago, if you went out of the country, salt wasn't as big of a thing. And you would have to search pretty hard for extra salt. So it's our society, and it goes hand in hand with the processing. Because originally salt was used as a curative and preservative for food when we didn't have as much access to food. And so we just kind of got used to it, right?
And is soy sauce considered salt?
Yes.
But they
Mhm.
have low sodium.
They have low sodium. They do. So that's a better option. So what I would say for you as a recommendation, which one you would like? Oh, yes, sir.
What was the last thing you mentioned?
Soy sauce? Soy sauce? Yeah.
Soy sauce?
Soy sauce, very high in sodium, but so you need to choose the low sodium version if you're going to use that. In fact, my husband was like, he's like, why are you putting salt on that? I'm like, well, because you're putting soy sauce on yours. I don't like soy sauce. And so it didn't register there for him. So the recommendation I would give you practically is if you're trying to reduce your salt, the first thing you're going to do is don't add it, because most of our products already have enough of it. Okay, so just don't add more. Add some other alternative seasonings. There's so many great no salt versions of seasonings out there, whether it's Mrs. Dash or whether it's just herbs and spices that you use yourself. There's so many great stores now. Has anyone ever been to Penzi Spice? Yeah. Oh, that's so fun in there. And so there's a lot of great spices in there to use that are not salt-based, that we can start to retrain our palates. I used to work with a lot of young kids, and I would ask them if they'd ever tasted a potato without salt, and they're like, wait, what? I'm like, no cheese, no sour cream, no salt, and they had no idea what a potato really tasted like. So I would encourage you, try to eat your food naked and see what it tastes like. See if you enjoy it. Yes, sir.
I used to work in construction outdoors. We would sweat a lot.
Yep.
And I read somewhere that one of the first organs in the body affected by dehydration is the brain.
Because, yeah, I would agree with that. And so living in Arizona and being outside, we have some different requirements for salt intake. I'm reading Death in the Grand Canyon. It's a super uplifting book. I just finished a whole chapter on being overhydrated, because people will drink a lot of water thinking that I need to drink more water because I don't want to get dehydrated. And in true, they'll drink more water, but then not eat anything. And they'll become hypernatremic, which means their blood volume is really high and their sodium level is too low, that they start to lose brain function as well. So there is a balance when we live in a hot desert and we do sweat, that we do need more water. And so some of that comes with a little bit of more salt than we might need if we lived back east where it's freezing all the time. Okay. All right, wine. I had to throw this in there. This is a key component that probably the favorite piece of the Mediterranean diet for most people is, oh, I get to drink wine. And if you'll notice, my two bold words here are studies show wine may be protective and of potentially aiding in reducing inflammation. So the studies that they've done, you need to drink a lot. I mean, and I know you're all like, well, I'm up for the challenge. I mean, a lot of wine, like barrel kind of consumption of wine to see some of the effects that they're seeing. Okay. So the recommendation around wine is if you do drink red wine, yes, has potential benefits for your heart health. However, if you don't drink, don't start. Okay. If you do drink, the recommendation is 1 glass, and it is definitely way smaller than that glass on the picture. It's 6 ounces for women and 2 for men. I don't know why you guys get another drink, but you do. So lucky you. So again, If you don't start. If you do, it's in moderation, and red wine is the choice of that we recommend. Okay. White wine doesn't seem to have the same benefits because it lacks some of the tannins and some of that coloring that comes with a red wine. That can be protective to our heart. Can be. But if you don't like it and you're going to just have to drink more of it, then stick with your white wine, right? All right. So I have, okay, so this is what's new. And this is kind of what came through randomly on some emails to me this weekend. So this really isn't that new. And I don't know why it has the things up on top. So I'm sorry for that random typos up there. Blood pressure. This has always been the gold standard, is having our systolic at 120 or lower. I actually really think that the new standard coming out is going to be closer to the 110s. Okay, but at this point, we want our systolic to be at 120 or below. Okay, for ideal heart health. Artificial sweeteners. If you've been to any of my talks, you know I'm not a super big fan of artificial sweeteners. And I will give you the caveat that in the studies that I read regarding artificial sweeteners in our brain health and heart health, oh my gosh, I just lost my word. I'll come back to it. But that there has been links to increase risk for Alzheimer's disease with increased intake of artificial sweeteners. What do you guys think of that?
So, Truvia, stevia,
Yep.
they're supposed to be plant-based, are those still sugar?
No.
No. Are they
Will you repeat that?
So she said stevia and Truvia, which is it's the commercial brand of stevia, right? Those were not, that's the word I was searching for. Those were not part of this study. It was mainly the aspartame and the saccharides that were part of this study that we're referencing. And it is not part of that sugar. Okay. So stevia and monk fruit were not listed in there. It is listed in there. That is linked to increased risk for Alzheimer's disease.
Will you
Also, I read
which one she said?
Erythritol. Okay. And that is because it showed a 60% faster decline in cognitive function with large intakes of artificial sweetener. And so for those of you that have diabetes, this is what we recommend you to use, right? Is an artificial sweetener. So you just have to kind of balance it. How much artificial sweetener are you using? Can you use a whole food, naturally sweetened product instead? If you're looking for something really sweet and you're used to using artificial sweetener, can you choose a piece of fruit, for instance, that also has some vitamins and some fiber? Will that fit into your nutrition plan? Because, and the reason behind this, it has multi-factors around why they're believing that the artificial sweeteners is now linked to cognitive decline and an increased risk for Alzheimer's, also has to do with that gut-brain axis. That artificial sweeteners irritate our gut, and so then that sends a wrong message through that gut-brain connection, okay? So, and it just may help to increase that laying down of that amylase beta protein that is linked with the Alzheimer's. I found that super intriguing because for the longest time we've been told, oh, artificial sweeteners are okay. And then we said, oh, wait, saccharide's linked to cancer. So it just goes to say the more longitudinal studies that we do on all of these kind of new things that we think are going to be good for our health may in fact then turn out to be, okay, maybe we don't want to eat that. But again, we can make changes and we can reverse some of this risk if we start to change how our eating habits are now. And then deep sleep. Are you guys all good sleepers? No. Yeah, I'm in the no group. So I was like, after I read this, I was like, yikes. But so they did a study and it showed that people that had better deep sleep had a lower level of the amylase beta protein. So a lower risk for Alzheimer's. So that's pretty cool to know if we can learn how to sleep better. And there was a slight little caveat that if we can learn how to sleep better naturally, there seems to be better results if we don't take a sleep enhancer, that is more beneficial to us. So that means practicing really great sleep hygiene, stopping our use of anything with that blue light, stopping TV, not eating too late, keeping our room cool, all of these things that are, that equal sleep hygiene, and really getting that deep sleep that can help to improve our chances of maintaining our cognitive function longer. Okay, so I found that really cool. But it makes.
What about these CPAP machines? When do you need those things?
Where?
CPAP, they're called CPAP
Yep.
machines.
Yeah, well, that helps you sleep, right? And but just through oxygen. So when I said naturally, I meant like with a sleep medication. Yeah. And then exercise, right? This is nothing new, but I wanted to reiterate the importance of being active. That helps keep our blood flowing. It helps with our vascularization. So that's really important for our heart as well as our brain. Okay. All right, and then finally, here's our practical tips. So consistency is the key. We're in February. How many of you had a New Year's resolution that you're still sticking with? Oh, good for you.
I went back to walk.
That was
Because I was missing walking last year. I lost my husband. I didn't feel like doing anything. So this year is
better, probably for the connection that you're getting through work, I would imagine. But consistency is what, like when we want to start a new habit, being consistent around that can often feel very difficult. That things come up, we may not be used to it. So my picture of plan B is have a plan, but then have a backup plan and a backup plan. Because what's going to happen is I'm going to eat really healthy today and somebody says, hey, can you meet me for lunch? You haven't seen that person in months? Absolutely. And you pick a place and potentially they're not going to have the healthiest options. So what are you going to do? Plan ahead, look at the menu, decide what's your healthiest choice, that kind of thing. Okay, so have a plan in order to manage your consistency, to build those healthy habits that will help us reverse any potential foods that we might have eaten in our past to help with our heart and our brain. But then also having some flexibility because life happens. Friends do call and say they want to meet us. We do have to help and run around and do errands, and sometimes we don't always get to make that home-cooked meal. Okay? So understanding that life happens and being flexible and going with it and knowing that you didn't blow it. That tomorrow's a new day and you can go get right back on your healthy eating habits tomorrow. Small steps. So we teach another class for our employees, and often I get the question of where do I start? There's so much here. Pick one thing, just one tiny little thing. So if right now you might choose to drink a fully sweetened, more milk than coffee drink, that maybe I choose a smaller size. Or maybe I choose to only have that on the weekends. So choosing one thing and making it just a small step makes it much more doable and more easy. So what is that thing for you? Are you using more sugar than you think you should? Are you using salt on the table? Should you just remove that and replace it with a no sodium seasoning? Something simple so that you have a win that's easy to continue and then you pick up something else, okay? So think about that. Anything is better than nothing, okay? If you're not active now and you start to walk 3 days a week just for 5 minutes, anything is better than nothing.
Make sure just flip the food pyramid from meat on the bottom to meat on the top and everything in between. Are you addressing that in your work, or how do you address that in your work?
So I will be 100% honest and tell you that my work doesn't really include much nutrition at all anymore, except when I come to talk to you. There it is. But we're still going to stick with the Mediterranean diet, that we want to focus on plants, that we want to focus on healthy fats, that we want to focus on real foods, whole foods, and that fats, we want to choose healthy fats. That will always be what we promote. Okay. You need to figure out your why. Why do you want to change your diet? Because as I said, it's really hard to feel those changes when we start to eat healthy, other than a change in our weight or maybe a change in our body composition if we're really focused on making big changes in our macronutrients. But it's hard to feel like when our vessels are cleared. It's hard to feel when our brain is, magically going to start to remember more. So what is your why for eating healthy? So you got to think about that. There is a great commercial, and it starts out with, there's this older gentleman. He walks out into his garage, and he has a kettlebell, and he goes out there and he puts his shoes on, and he goes out and he lifts his kettlebell just maybe like an inch off the ground. He puts it back down and he goes back in the house. And then you see the next day he puts his shoes on, he goes back out to the garage and he lifts his kettlebell a little bit farther up. And he does this over a course, that keeps flashing days, until finally you see him go outside, and then his kids get there and his grandkid runs up to him. And then he takes her inside, and he is able to lift her up to put their star on the top of the Christmas tree. So his whole why he went through being, having this habitual practice of going out and lifting his kettlebell, is because he wanted to be able to lift his granddaughter up. So making healthy changes, like I said, can be overwhelming when we're thinking about our diet, because we don't see immediate changes. It's not very gratifying. So what is your ultimate why? For me, I don't want to be a burden to my kids, right? I want to have a great quality of life and remember things and be able to make decisions. So what is your why? Think about that. And it's never too late to start. As I talked about earlier, is that studies have shown if we start to make changes in our diet, we can improve our cognitive function that might have already been showing a decline. So we can make positive changes. All right. I think that is all.
Thank you, Mary. So I actually had that was a great presentation. I had a couple of questions that came in. So let me ask you about those. One was when you were talking about the sodium, what about low blood pressure?
So if you have low blood pressure, it's not that you're going to eat more salt, because more salt in your diet isn't necessarily going to improve the sodium in your blood and affect your blood pressure. So that's more of a physician medication kind of management.
Okay. Now I do want to let everyone know, because I looked this up. You mentioned that it's about 2,000 milligrams, right, of salt. So I wanted to know, well, how much was that in a something, so people understand what that is. And it looks like it's about a teaspoon of table salt.
Mm-hmm.
So just so everyone knows, how much is 2,000 milligrams? Right. So yeah. I think that's always important to, I was like, well, how
visualize
much is that exactly? Right.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite snack when you're craving something that would be that, like, if you love salt, you love the salty things, what would be a favorite snack that somebody could try to sort of watch their intake?
So when I am craving something salty, my favorite snack is cottage cheese, because it is higher in sodium, but I'm also getting calcium and protein with it. So I try to think about, if I'm wanting something salty, how can I make the best of it by having the other nutrients that are beneficial to me.
Okay. If you're put onto a GLP-1, are there types of foods you should eat more of to counteract any potential negative side effects of being on the GLP-1?
So I did just read a study that people that are taking GLP-1s are often are at risk for nutrient deficiencies. So I would tell somebody, if you're on a GLP-1, you should be working with a dietitian because then they can look at your diet specifically. But same thing applies. Fruits and vegetables, and this is Mediterranean diet, right? We're looking at whole grains. We're looking at plant-based source proteins or proteins that are high in healthy kinds of fats, like the fishes. So that's what I would tell them is we still need to be eating a healthy diet and really focusing on those that are rich in those vegetables and fruits.
Okay. How long can it take for you to break an eating habit?
No answer. That is completely individualistic.
Okay.
Very individualistic.
But how about any tips for what to do to combat eating just because you're bored?
So the acronym that we use is HALT. If you're eating and you don't understand, it doesn't seem like it's the right time to be eating, ask yourself, am I really hungry? Maybe. Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I thirsty? Or am I tired? Okay, so if you think about that, a lot of those times we'll figure out I'm probably just bored and lonely. And so maybe I should pick up the phone and call somebody or text somebody, or maybe I should go for a walk and see people in my neighborhood. Sometimes it's just because we're tired. Like when I was in college, I would snack a lot just trying to cram and stay awake all night. I still kind of do that for Maya's presentation. Just kidding. I know. But tiredness, what do you think about? Does anybody take long road trips? My husband used to be a big road tripper and he would like snack the whole way. I'm like, really? Is this what we do? We bring a cooler in the car for 7 hours? I don't. So it's very common that we do that. So just really thinking about, rather than just eating because this is what you've always done, starting to really think about what you're doing and what goes in your mouth is really probably the hardest part of eating healthy, honestly.
Well, that is a great tip. I don't think I've ever heard the HALT before. And so that's a really wonderful tip for people to know. So thank you for sharing that. Now on the new food pyramid, so that sort of turned upside down, right? We should still be looking at whole grains from the sounds of it and not,
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We always want to be, because of the fact that whole grain foods are generally less processed, and we're going to get a little bit more fiber, which is really important for our gut, which now we know our gut is connected to our brain and our heart and pretty much everything in our body. So the more fiber we can get in our diet, the better. So whole grains is going to be the best choice.
Great. Mary, I want to thank you so much for being here. That wraps up all of my questions. I'm going to wrap up with our online audience, and I will turn it over to you to answer any additional questions in person. Thanks so much for being here. We look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you'll join us again. We have one more heart class this week. It is on Thursday, February 26th. It's angioplasty to valve repair, minimally invasive solutions. That'll be on Thursday, February 26th at 10 a.m. If you're interested in that class, please give us a call. The phone number is 520-324-1960. I also want to share that starting in March, it is Brain Health Month. We've got a lot of wonderful classes coming up. The calendar did just come out. If you're interested, I just want to share with you a couple of our first classes that you'll see. On Tuesday, March 10th, we have Rest Assured, Sleep and Stroke Prevention. And on Wednesday, March 11th, Opening the Door, How to Talk About Mental Health. And then on Thursday, March 12th, we'll have Think Fast, Stroke Signs and Symptoms. So I hope you'll be able to join us for those classes as well. If you are interested in joining, please give us a call. Phone number again is 520-324-1960. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.